You lucky people. Today I'm going to show you something that it took me literally years to understand or just to even realize was a thing. When you're drawing your cartoons, when you haven't been doing it for a long time, you're most intent on getting the proportions of the character right, getting everything correct, that kind of thing. But what you tend to leave out, what you tend to just not think about at that point, especially when you're relatively new at this, is the dynamic pose. I mean, being a bit like this, making sure that the emotion of the scene is being carried properly and that the action in the scene is being carried properly. And you can't do that with people just going like this. So let's take a look. I'll give you a few pointers and away you go from there. Now, we're going to look at doing dynamic poses, and you can see from here that I've just put a character in. It's just a simple little character. And as you may know from other of my videos, which I would always encourage you to take a look at, especially if you're in the sort of beginner to intermediate level, is that I would never just do a cartoon. I always do the underdrawing, especially for the face, but for all other parts of the body, when you're going to try and get a decent pose going, you need to understand that you're not going to get it right first time with your underdrawing. It'll go wrong from time to time, but that's all right. It's all part of it. When you build anything, you have to create a structure underneath. So what I'm going to do here is just try and replicate this character. By the way, if you hear vehicles going past, which you probably can hear right now, it's because my little workroom here in France opens onto the main road, which is usually very, very quiet, but occasionally the cars come through. So now I'm going to have this chap. I'm going to give him an aspect. I'm going to make him look upwards for one thing. We're going to imagine that he's spotted, maybe a bird in the sky or an aeroplane or something like that. So, and I make his body out of this kind of pear shape like this, because my style of cartooning is much more to do with people looking mildly or wonderfully amusing rather than all serious. So here we are. We have our man looking up like this, eyebrows up, and his mouth is just kind of an interested mouth. It's not particularly doing anything. But what we're going to do now is we'll give him. You see me? I'm going over this, increasing the exaggeration of everything a bit all the time. So our man is going to be looking up at something in the sky rather than just standing. So we're going for a pose that has a bit of energy, a bit of dynamism in it. This line here is a key to this. It's the action line. Although he's not doing anything, it gives a feel for where the energy is, because he's leaning backwards, you see. That's where the energy is. And we'll have him point up at something as well. Some of you are going to be thinking, oh, he's drawing this hand really rapidly. Wish I could do that. Well, I've got a video on hands, how you can make them much easier for yourself than they might otherwise be. But let's stick with this for the moment. So we've got our man like this, and it's a fairly, it's a more dynamic pose than the chap next door to him. But now we're going to take him and we're going to make him really quite angry. We're going to throw his head back. So here's the meridian, but the equator now is up here, because he's going to be very angry. He's going to be hopping mad, as we used to say. So his eyes are going to be screwed up tight. And there, if you look at that, what I've just drawn, it's one of those, isn't it, really? It's an arrow for his eyes. So I'm not actually drawing an eye at all. I'm drawing something that will look like a screwed up eye. Put a couple of ears on, they'll be quite low down. But now we make this slightly lopsided because it looks more anguished. The bottom of his mouth and the shape of his mouth. And if we really wanted to get it going, we could put the teeth in here much bigger than teeth would normally be. So just like that. And now you can see, look at the tension and the anger in this form. And we're going to have him so angry that he's quite literally hopping mad. So you need to foreshorten his legs, and this means this sort of thing. Here's this is underdrawing. This is not the finished thing. It just gives me. I mean, I'll want to hang some clothes on it eventually, but right now I'm just putting everything where I want it to be. So his foot is like this. We always do the feet slightly bigger than in real life because we just want them to look quite funny, really. And he's hopping probably from one foot to another, like this, and point that foot down because there's the ground underneath. We'll put that there just as a shadow to give a clue. And now we can put the arms in. Now I like to do the arms, I like to put the hands in kind of unconnected from the arms first of all, because at least I get them where I want them to be, and then I can make the arms come in and catch up. You see, you can actually see his hands in position quite nicely, and then we can put the arms in afterwards, and we know that we've got everything pretty well in the right place. So it works like that. Now after that, having got the pose where I want it, I'm going to put some, these are either tears of rage or perspiration coming out of him, and we want some movement here as well, and we could put the this kind of smokiness coming out of his head as well. But now we'll go to putting it to the ink stage and just make it a little bit better. So that's going to be like this. Again, we haven't really developed the character at all, but we're just tidying him up. I think the truth of the matter is you've probably already got characters of your own that you draw, or that you would like to draw, and it's just a case of trying to get them into better poses than you may up until now have been doing, because it's usual that you're thinking more about just how you like the way your character looks and that sort of thing, and you just want to get him right. You don't want to make any mistakes. But with cartoons, mistakes are inevitable, and they don't always matter either. They really don't, because it's that kind of a medium. It's very elastic. You can do lots of things with it. So there you are. Look, again, a lot of what I'm doing with these hands is kind of like a shorthand, pardon the pun. Put the smoke in, or steam, and the beads of sweat or tears, and we'll give him some proper clothes here. Trousers, stroke pants, depending on where you come from in the world. Shoes, let's put a heel on his shoe like that, and yeah, give his trousers, stroke pants a bit of shape. And remember that they are foreshortened slightly, so you've got to get the curves, got to consider the curves of the clothing as well. So here is our very angry man. A dynamic pose, really, and we take away the background, and that leaves us plenty to work with. We can do as much or as little as we want with this, and we can put his shadow there, and we can show his rage by giving him an R like that, and that is a dynamic pose as distinct from this thing over here, which is, it's fair enough if you wanted to show somebody looking in the shop window and not really engaging with anything around. that's quite probably how you would do it. Simple and straightforward. Now we'll just have another little run at this, just to sort of concrete it into your mind. Other kind of principles that I would work with would be drawing a stick man as the underdrawing. To try, let's show a chap who's looking a bit concerned about something, and he puts his hand out like this. So we're using the stick man to build the structure. There's a chap who's looking a bit frightened, and that's good. You know, we need chaps who are a bit frightened. Let's put his hand there. As I said before, quite often it's good to do the hand before the arm, because you get it into the place you want, and you can bring the arm to it. Or in this case, we're not going to see much of the arm because it's going to be behind that hand, and that's kind of come together quite nicely. But now I don't want him just standing straight up as my first outline did. I want him to be backing away slightly like this, and you know, just feeling away behind him with his foot. And this one, well, we'll decide how we want that. Do we like it like that? Do we want it like that? No, we don't want it like that. That's not going to work. And you can see this is the benefit of using this method of drawing, is that you can always make decisions as you go as to exactly what you want. Now here I'm getting a feeling that this is quite a nice pose like this. Shows him being a bit concerned at the least, and people who are concerned don't tend to look up, they tend to look a bit down like this, and we'll have him properly frightened, so he's going to have much bigger eyes than he might normally have. And you put the eyeball right in the middle, bang in the middle there, because that shows fear. That, as you can see. I mean, you don't need me to tell you now that you've seen it. That shows fear when you've got the eyeball right in the middle. You've got to think of the characters you draw, the ones that you like to draw, and how would you depict them in this way, because you're watching this presumably because you think that maybe your own poses for your own cartoon characters are not that good. But you want to use your own cartoon characters because it's your creativity, and that's absolutely key. I mean, I can show you one of my own cartoon characters, not dissimilar from this chap here. I've got a cartoon strip involving a lot of monks in the 14th century. Okay, I know you probably think that's a bit sad, but my monk here, I'm going to show him kind of running away from something, so that we can see again a little bit of a proper pose. Give him his eyes like this, but because he's running away from something, we'll put his, see, that's not the best place, we'll put his pupil here, so that he's clearly concerned about something behind him. And you know, the posing of the face is often as important as the rest. I'll put a bit of a shout on him, a bit of a cry, and now we'll take his legs. Well, we'll take this one, and there you see, I'm just making a mark to show from an action point of view where I want that foot to be. I want it to be exaggerated in its energy, if you like, without sounding too pretentious. This one, it can go like this, and it will show him, you know, the ground's going to be here, so he's running so fast that his feet don't touch the ground. Naturally, that's how we run. You know, that's the definition of running, at least 1 foot off the ground, and in between strides, usually 2. So I'm going to give him his little hand like this, so he's got a fist like this, and here his hand is like this, and and he's got his monk's habit here. Those of you who don't know monk's habits, I apologize for that, but it's basically a very loose-fitting sort of a single piece robe, as it were. And because he's running, I want it dragging slightly behind him like this. And there's a hood that goes with it, and I want that to be out there like this. And so we'll fill in there and make that hood come clean out like that, because it's catching the air as he runs. You've got to think about these things. What actually happens when people run? Their clothes catch the air. So also, this chap being a monk, his habit, as it's known, behaves in this way, because it's being stretched by his stride, and it's also blowing out at the back like that, again because of the act of running and the movement. So now, oh, and he has a special type of a haircut where the top is kept bald. For those of you in parts of the world where you've never seen this, it is quite interesting. There are religious reasons for it, but we won't worry about that at the moment. So now let's actually finish this off with a bit of inking. And again, got that slightly wrong. Don't work too slowly, because you want some vitality in your drawing as much as you want all the other things. You know, you want a good pose, but you want vitality. That mouth is like a letter D or an upside down 9 if you look at it. It's that easy to do. It's just one way of drawing a mouth. There are hundreds of ways, but it's quite a nice way. When you want that expression, then you pull out your letter D, really. Give him a bottom lip there. And now, again, I'm working reasonably swiftly because I want the vitality in the picture. I don't want it to look like something computer generated. Heaven forbid, eh? So here's all his gear. Yeah, I need to get the eraser out for that bit there. Let's just get the eraser out for that bit there. Done. Good. The important thing is we've got action in the drawing. It's not somebody just standing there, or, you know, running in a sort of unnatural fashion. Yeah, you can hear the vehicles going past out there. That's a big lorry that comes around quite regularly, and it carries goat cheese, which the area around here is quite famous for. Okay, we're nearly done. Pull it right round the back there. And his shoe. Let's not worry too much about the detail on things like shoes, unless the kind of stuff you do, your own type of characters are very dependent on the type of clothes they wear, which I suppose is possible. Shoes only have to be done as simply as you like. You know, they're not key. It's the position of them that's key. And here we are. We've got our man running along like this. So we've got, maybe it went from one to the other. Here he is. He's frightened, and now he starts running. Oh, and little beads of perspiration. And perhaps a line on his face, but little beads of perspiration. When you do little beads of perspiration, or birds in the sky, or anything that seems to be random out there, try always to do odd numbers. Don't do 6 and don't do 8. do 1, 3, 5, 7 and so on. Although we can't count it just by looking at it, and we wouldn't count it just by looking at it, it does appear to make quite a big difference. So here's the example of getting these kind of poses working. I want to just show you one more. And it's a more sedate thing, but it's about getting the feeling of the pose into the drawing. And what I'm going to do is a chap lazing in his chair. He's going to be just not doing anything, but you know, the tendency would be, here's a man in a chair, you know, like this, like this, like this, like this, chair. So until you've kind of learnt something about how this works, that's the way. But I would say, don't do that. We've still got to think of our character, properly drawing our character. So I'm going to draw him like this. He's going to be just sitting in his chair, maybe watching the telly, that sort of thing. Give him his little nose there. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you how to sort of construct him with the underdrawing. It's so important, the underdrawing. He's going to be a bit like this. His legs planted on the ground will be like this, but can't have them both at that angle because of where you've got to consider your own sight line is. So we'll have his other leg like this. Somebody recently said that the art of drawing is more about looking than it is anything else. And if you watch how people sit when they relax to watch the TV, for instance, you find that their head comes forward more than you would really think. So let's get that in here. You know, that there's a bit of the head coming forward. And people with the kind of furniture that we have in our houses, people do tend to slouch quite a lot, you know. So we'll put an arm of the chair just here and make it like that. Again, remember this is just underdrawing, so I'm some of these lines may or may not be wanted at the end, but I've got to put the construction here so as to understand where I've got to put his arms. You know, until I've done that, it's very difficult to know. So there's the chair like that, and you can see it's all coming together. And I'll do his hands first. Yeah. Thumb goes over the side like that. Here we'll have the thumb, fingers coming down like this, like this, like this. And I just put these they're almost like the contours that I'm putting on him. So here he is sitting there watching the TV, probably, or just thinking. And try not to make his feet be both doing the same thing. I mean, I don't know if you ever do this, I sit like this sometimes. The foot over like that. So you can only see the sole from this angle. That would be how I would sit sometimes, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the other foot would be like that. It could just be kind of normal, like that. So now you start to get the idea. And this is not a picture I'm going to finish as a proper finished item. It's just an idea to show somebody we want him to be fairly amusing, so we'll just give him a couple of little hairs like that on the top of his head, and a double chin. So from this point, you know, you could start introducing, you know, something that sits back here that he's not aware of, like we could have a little mouse like this. It's sitting there behind him that he doesn't know anything about. That's all part of the pose as well. It's all part of the idea. Cushions will be depressed like that a bit when somebody's sitting on them, be slightly squashed, and then you've got the bottom of the chair going along like that. So see, it all comes together and it looks fairly natural. The weight of the body is where you would expect it to be, but it's all because of the underdrawing. And just thinking about how the pose might be, it could have been leaning over a bit more, if I'm honest. Could have done a bit more that way. Maybe I will. Let's just bring that over, and we'll take his arm along here. Yeah, just a bit more of a lean on it. But you see, you get the idea. And then, well, I suppose what I could do is just give it the inking now, just to take it to its conclusion, so you can see what it might look like with all this scribble taken away. So we'll just draw him. He's got quite a heavy, well, he's pretty overweight really, this chap. Because I've got all this underdrawing in, I can be fairly loose with the rest of it. I don't need to be too studious because, if you like, the map's already been drawn. Now I can come down here, I can put a couple of creases here. To his fingers. It's good to have done all that contour work, because it kind of half does the job for you. Without it, you wouldn't be able to, well, unless you're a genius, which you might well be, and if you're not one yet, I hope you are soon. But you probably would never be able to get a pose like this worked out if you didn't do your underdrawing. He's coming along quite nicely really, isn't he? All things considered. Yeah. Quite like him. Feet. Feet are often quite a challenge. Getting the aspect of them right. They're fairly expressive things sometimes, feet. It can be quite key in some pictures that you do to get your, the attitudes of the characters in your cartoon. To get it correct, you need to make sure that the feet are right as well. Yeah, that's what we wanted, that angle there. We'll just put half of that line there, and let's have our little mouse. Everybody likes a little mouse. We don't need to go into too much detail. It's fairly obvious what he is, or she. Could be a she, of course. And I think that's him done like that. So you've got, and now that we're just looking at this, we might say, well, we'll add a few things in here. We'll put some sort of better detail. We've not got his trousers in, or pants, or however you want. We've not got that in, but we can start adding shading in the parts where we think there would be sort of darker areas. Like under there, on the chair there will be shadow underneath, won't there? But what we've got is the main character now properly posed, and that's what we came here for. We wanted to get poses right. And I think he's pretty well right. You could do more with it, and I would suggest that you do. But think about the characters that you like to draw, the ones that you particularly have created for yourself, and think about how to pose them properly. Think about doing your underdrawing, making mistakes, choosing to put a leg here and a leg there and getting it wrong, doesn't matter. And at this point, if you've been getting any kind of pleasure out of this, or if it's bringing you any value, please hit the like button. That will cheer me up no end. And also subscribe so that you don't miss the next videos that come along. Thanks for watching. See you next time.